Hi. There's this brilliant formula, it's a process actually, by this wonderful master hypnotist, Igor Ledochowski. And what it is a formula for really fast, deep level therapeutic change that can be delivered conversationally. And he calls it the PCAT formula, where PCAT stands for the first letters of each element of the, or phase of the process for PCAT. So that reads problem, confusion, activation, and transformation. First, you identify the problem. Next, you go through a confusion that eventually leads to clarity. Then you activate a solution, and then you engender a transformation that integrates, meaning it carries through the changes through all aspects of the person's life, and this maps out through every other problem that the person happens to have. So problem, confusion, activation, transformation. And how I tend to look at Igor Ledochowski's PCAT tool is the same way I look at all stories of triumph. All stories where there's first a challenge and then there's triumph, or redemption, or resurrection. I look at it the way I look at Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Now, instead of like so many different parts to the hero's journey, I tend to look at the hero's journey as a circle with 4 parts. And another way of looking at this is you have a circle, and then there's the overworld, and then there's the underworld. And if you look at it as like quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4, the hero starts at home and then has to leave home to face a challenge. Or the hero leaves home to descend into the underworld, and then the hero achieves something or triumphs in some way or gains a tool or sometimes a wife, and then goes home, leaves the underworld, goes home to celebrate. So hero's journey for me is overworld, underworld, and the hero leaves home to face a challenge, gains a tool, then goes home to celebrate. So you could look at it as Thor in Asgard goes to face a horde of frost giants, gains Mjolnir or Stormbreaker, and triumphs and returns home to Asgard or Valhalla for a celebration. So this to me is the story of all great stories, and this to me is also problem, confusion or challenge, activation, and then transformation, or Igor Ledochowski's super famous, super powerful, super useful PCAT formula. Hats off to you, Sir Igor. And if you look at the parts of the PCAT formula, there are certain things which I'd really like to highlight. First off, in the problem or home stage, it's really important to check that what you see as the patient's presenting problem is actually the problem, because very often the patient or client will say or declare something that isn't actually the problem, and the actual problem is actually something deeper, something that's hidden under the declared problem. And very often the patient won't even know this, that their real problem is hiding behind their declared problem. So that's very important to look at. In the second stage of the PCAT formula, in the problem or challenge or proceeding to descend into underworld for adventure stage, it's really important, I think, that we have in our minds the frame and the understanding that this is a challenge and that it isn't a bad thing to be confused. So I see this also in the aspects that Igor pointed out. And my way of looking at it as is that the conflict or confusion or challenge stage, the part where the hero descends into the underworld, has several really important elements that we should look at. And among these, they're all kind of like C's. There's the conscious bypass, or the bypass of the critical factor or the overthinking mind, or the bypass of the parental mind, so that we can talk to the part which actually does the changes, the unconscious mind. If you think about it, people who smoke or are addicted to something, they've been told that the addiction is really bad, but they can't do anything about it. Even though they know it's bad, the rational mind knows that it's bad. Unless the unconscious gets it and does something about it, no real change happens. So this highlights for me the importance of speaking to the unconscious mind, of bypassing the conscious mind, of doing conscious bypass. Another C is, for the confusion state, another C is commanding a clear route. When we take on the guise or the mantle of the hypnotherapist, we're essentially functioning as the person's higher mind or superconscious or parental conscious mind. Essentially, we're in charge. So we have to take it upon ourselves to first do no harm and then to take positive charge and to take this opportunity to command a clear route. Because the patient, via their internal protective mechanisms, with the limited understanding that they have, may not understand that they're trying to help. And so they may back up into like recesses and try to escape your therapeutic intervention. And it's really useful to prepare the route so that when they're trying to escape, the places they escape or back into are the places you prepared as safe spaces and havens for them so that they can make positive changes in their lives going forward. So, conscious bypass, command a clear route, and then next would be for still in that C phase of the PCAT formula, still in that challenge or confusion stage, conscious bypass, command a clear route, chunk the problem so that it's smaller or easier to handle. We have this old joke among therapists, like that kind of goes, how do you eat an entire elephant or mammoth? And the answer is, of course, to chunk it down. But it's not necessarily chunking it down. It may be chunking it up. Because very often, the patient in today's distracted world isn't even involved enough. So sometimes you have to increase the level of complication to make it interesting. So if there's no engagement, the solution is make it small enough so that they can face it, or make it big enough so that it gets their attention in the first place. So that's my way of looking at chunking. So conscious bypass, commanding a clear route, chunking. Next is cycle breaking, with the understanding that whatever they've been doing pathologically for some time now. And it's really useful for you to demonstrate, point out, show, and allow for breaking this pathologic cycle, this holding pattern, this whatever it is that they're stuck with and that they're being stuck by. So, conscious bypass, commanding a clear route, chunking up or down, breaking the cycle, and then finally, if you go through this, even without using all of them, but it's really nice if you can incorporate all of this, you can go from confusion to clarity. And my take on this is, confusion is that ultra juicy, yummy state right before you hit clarity of mind. So my take on this is, confusion is not only necessary, like you need to confront it, confusion must be pursued. Like it's not just an artifact or an accident of pursuing a therapeutic route for the patient. It's uber useful to truly pursue confusion with the understanding that confusion is the gateway to full clarity of mind. Because until the patient is confused, very often they're clear, they're definite, they're sure, they're resolute that their understanding is correct. And you have to be able to provide a space so that people confront their beliefs and understand the possibility that what they believe for the longest time is actually wrong. So you allow them to confront their dragon and to break it down, break it up into pieces. You allow them the opportunity to see that what they believe for the longest time may not be true. So we've gone through the PCAT's problem, confusion, and then we go to activation. And my usage of the activation phase is, as with the hero's journey, the hero goes from home, descends into the underworld to face a challenge, and then like Thor, having to leave home, his father dying, confronting challenges, and he's also lost his brother, and he's also lost Mjolnir. Storm then gains a new tool, and that to me is the activation stage where the hero gains a triumph or a tool, or gains a tool and then triumphs with that tool. And elements to this phase, to the activation phase of the PCAT process or the PCAT process, include reframing, storytelling, emoting, experiencing, and visualizing. Let me go through this real quick. A reframe is a tool by which we allow the person to be confronted with the fact and then accept it that what they believed for the longest time might actually not be true, or that it's actually completely false. Just the opportunity to consider that even though they've thought themselves right for the longest time, that they could be wrong. That's the essence of a reframe. So you're essentially taking a notion and then bending it on itself. So it's like, instead of breaking a belief, you might first bend or reroute a belief. So that's reframing, and you can do this very easily verbally. There are several tools, including sleight of mouth and mind-bending language and clear languaging tools, and we can go over these at another discussion point in time. So there's the reframe, and then there's a storytelling or analogy or metaphor. And here we essentially find a way to piggyback indirectly that if no resolution is in sight, it just might be because the story isn't over. And that the natural progression of a story is that there is a challenge, there's a problem, but these problems are confronted, and that tools and triumph are gained and celebration will happen eventually. And this is essentially the hero's journey as used within the A or activation or triumph part of the PCAT or hero's journey as a process tool for conversational change. So still under A, there's triumph tool idea, and we've talked about reframing, storytelling. You can also use emoting or emotion, and essentially what we need here is a super strong positive emotion, either current or anchored strongly from the past and brought to light in the present, that collapses negative emotions. So essentially you're taking strong negative emotions and rewriting them with strong positive emotions. Another version of this is taking positive experiences from the past or the current experience that they have now as a locus of change or a source of light that allows them to rewrite past dark or negative experiences. So there's strong positive rewriting emotion and a strong positive rewriting experience. And we can also use visualizations or dynamic mental imagery, where you essentially can use pictures or picturings or movies or frames or slides or stills. And like a movie where you have your client picture themselves in the movie, they can enforce changes so that the story they've had for the longest time is rewritten in real time. And you can in fact prepare slides, so to speak, that they can, when they're faced with a problem again, they drop this new slide they prepared to override old negative experiences. So under the activation, there's the reframe, the storytell, the positive emotion, the positive experience, and the visualization or dynamic mental imagery. And under the T part of the PCAT formula, we have transformation. And for me, as I pointed out earlier, this correlates with the celebration phase of the hero's journey, where the hero descends into the underworld, gains a tool, and goes into celebration or transformation. And if you look at NLP, this correlates well with the integration phase, where you essentially take all the new lessons, learnings, understandings, and positive states and changes they made at conscious and unconscious and even superconscious levels, and then they integrate this into all levels of being and allow this to carry out through the entire timeline, back and forth, so much so that this event informs future decisions and rewrites past memories, so that overall the present going forward creates a future they could not have imagined possible before you allow them to have the space for transformation. And I hope this has been useful. This has been Strix, and we've talked about the hero's journey as a process tool that overlaps strongly with Igor Ledochowski's PCAT process as a tool for delivering conversational change at the deepest levels. And if you've got any questions, let me know. Cheers!